All right, so here we go. So let's see. We are in Psalm 22. I call it the Jesus Psalm or the Holy Water Psalm. So there you go. Okay, it starts out and David is like screaming out in his own anguish, but during a portion of his life, he's got lots of really cool stories, but during one portion of his life, he was actually being chased. So he was like fleeing for his life. And the armies were turned against him and everyone like David was, kind of bad off. He wasn't a popular guy when he was being hunted. So imagine a fucking bad day at work, dude. Like you have a bad day at work, King David is like getting hunted for like 30 fucking years. I don't know how long, but Oz will yell at me for throwing that out. But a really fucking long time. He's being hunted down to be killed. Even while he was the king, they're hunting him down and trying to kill him. And it was from his own family. So there's that. So he has a lot of lamentings. He also went to war a lot. David is the king that is attributed to uniting Israel. He had to go to war a lot. He killed a lot of janky DNA Nephilim creatures, right? And he also united all the tribes of Israel back under King David. So there was a lot of war, there were a lot of soldier shit, and there's also like he got hunted and chased down by his own family. So there you have it. So if you think you're having a shitty day at work, King David had it worse. All right. So it starts with him crying out a lot, as he usually does, or he does actually often. And then it quickly moves into like prophecy and hope. We don't think of King David as a prophet, but indeed he is. He's referred to as a prophet several times by the original apostles, rather than the apostles and Paul, but the original apostles. And one of them is Peter, and we'll get to that in a second. But you can see through this psalm, he's going to forget and doubt. He's going to remember, then he's going to praise the coming Messiah, and then he has confidence regained again. And he's like, all right, this is my bloodline. Remember, Jesus comes from David's bloodline, and bloodlines are huge in the Bible. And Oz never usually lets me read anything in the Bible without reminding me of the importance of the bloodlines. Okay, there's some parallel texts here. If you guys want to go a little bit deeper and look a little bit further, you know how preachers always like, blah, 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 turn to this book, blah, 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 turn to that book. And you're like, fuck, dude, just tell me the story. I know it drives me bananas too. What they're trying to do, and in my opinion, overdo, is back up what they're saying with 50,000 other places. So we're going to do a little of that, but not too much of that. So the first one is in John 15:18. This is my command to you, love one another. If the world hates you, understand that it hated me first. If you were of the world, it would love you as its own. But instead, the world hates you because you're not of this world. I have chosen you out of the world. So that's a good thing. In Acts 2:29-31, this is written by Luke, and this is Apostle Peter actually referred back to David as a prophet and talked about his prophecy on the cross from his bloodline, which is the Psalm 22 we're going to read today. And Peter says, brothers, I may say to you with confidence about the patriarch David, that he both died and was buried, and his tomb is right here with us today. But he was a prophet, and he knew that God had promised him on oath that he would place one of his descendants, meaning one of David's descendants, on the throne, meaning right on God's throne. Seeing what was to come, he spoke of the resurrection of the Messiah, and he was not abandoned to the realm of the dead. That's meaning Jesus. Jesus wasn't abandoned to the realm of the dead, nor did his body even see decay. The purpose for reading this psalm is actually there's two big purposes. I mean, there's a lot of purposes, but the two that I was wanted to point out today was to understand that there's always a deep connection and thread from the Old Testament into the New Testament. A lot of modern Western Christians like to divorce the Old Testament from the New Testament. No, you can't. As a matter of fact, Oz argues extensively that if you don't understand the Old Testament to the level of a fucking ancient Old Testament hoo-hoo like he is, you're going to miss so much in the New Testament. So Oz has me like rigorously in the Old Testament. He's like, John and Revelation, okay, good enough, go back. So if you're into the New Testament, he's like, fuck everything else. John, the book of John has all you need. So go there, and then the rest of the time of your whole life you can spend studying the Old Testament. So he's got me with the crotchety fuckers of the Old Testament. We've been there for years studying the Old Testament, which is kind of cool because it makes you go, oh, yeah, of course, whenever you get something from the New Testament, because it's like it's so linked. So he wants to stress the importance of that ribbon. You can't divorce it. It's the same God. Another lie from the pit of hell is going to criticize the God of the Old Testament. They want the God of the Old Testament to be this cruel guy who like wipes out fucking people, and they're like, oh, he's a maniac, genocidal freak. Now they're not understanding the bloodlines and the DNA of the fucking Satan, janky DNA, but that's another story. Um, he's the same God in the Old Testament as the New Testament, and the covenants are the same. And the laws are the same. And what you're supposed to do is the same. Jesus just like clarified it because it went so fucking off the rails with the Pharisees. But I digress. There's definitely that thread between the Old and New Testament, and you can't have one without the other. They're all the same. God doesn't change. So that's really important to him because people want the cushy, lovey-dovey, hippie Jesus that they pull out of the New Testament, and they want to forget and slander the Old Testament. All right. So in People of the World, your next purpose for reading is that whenever there's people of the world who are trying to treat you like shit, you're actually in really great company and rejoice that. I know it feels shitty, but remember, King Jesus and King David, all in one psalm, show how they were also treated like shit. And as children of God, we are called out of this world, so we are not going to always fit in this world, and the people of this world are not going to like us very much. At least if you're true and authentic to yourself.
Right now, in the we're using the Amplified Translation today, and I just kind of want to talk about what that is because you usually don't see a lot of people using it. And I'm not sure why. We jump all over to all kinds of translations here. So we're just going to share this tab and said, here's your AI overview um, about this translation. And it's not solely based on the Septuagint. It does consider the Septuagint and other versions for interpretation of textual differences. So what it does is it expands and clarifies meaning of words and context. So it's looking at the grammar, it's looking at the underlying connotations of words of many different places. So what this ends up doing is a lot of times, particularly in modern translations, the translator, who is at the behest of the publisher, right, is making a theological choice in what words to put in there and what words not put in there, and what connotation we sort of want to mold that verse into, because the connotations and inferences that they're molding throughout their word choice can sway the reader to a certain theology. So what this attempts to do, and sometimes it does it really well, and sometimes it does it not so well, is to kind of expand the meaning of some of these words using synonyms, definitions, and they're kind of put in brackets or parentheses. So these are actually based on all of the ancient languages, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, and they go back to the manuscripts, and it does include the Septuagint. Let's see, what else is important? It's not a direct translation of Septuagint, but a translation that considers both the Greek Septuagint and other versions. And its goal is to help the readers understand the different connotations of the ancient languages so they can get a fuller grasp and a full range of nuances that are there in the original language. So that's, share this tab instead. That's why we're using that one today. And I like to use lots of different translations so people kind of, get used to them and find out what they prefer. If you're not going back, like if if you're pigeonholed or caged into one translation, you're really missing out on a lot of the color, nuance, and interestingness of the Bible. And you should be going back to ancient languages whenever possible. I mean, I encourage people to actually take classes in Greek, but that's just me.
All right, there's some reflection questions. I'm going to go back to that. But here's the song. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I call out by day, but you don't answer. And at night, I find no rest or quiet. But you are holy. You are who enthroned in the holy place where the praises of Israel are offered. In you, our fathers trusted. They leaned on, relied on, and were confident. They trusted you, and you rescued them. They cried out to you and were delivered. They trusted in you and were not disappointed or ashamed. But I am treated as a worm, totally insignificant, totally powerless, and not a man. I am the scorn of men and despised by the people. All who see me laugh at me and mock me. They insultingly open their lips. They shake their heads, saying, He trusted and committed himself to the Lord. Let him save him. Let him rescue him, because he delights in him. Yet you are he who pulled me out of the womb. You made me trust when on my mother's breast. I was cast upon you from birth. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many enemies like bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. They open wide their mouths against me like ravening and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all of my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted by anguish within me. My strength is dried up like a fragment of clay pottery, and my dry tongue clings to my jaws. You have laid me in the dust of death. For pack of dogs have surrounded me. A gang of evildoers has encircled me. They pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones, and they look and stare at me. They divide my clothing among them and cast lots for my garment. But you, Lord, don't be far from me. Help me, come quickly to my assistance. Rescue my life from the sword, my only life from the paw of the dog. The paw of the dog is actually referring to the executioner in this case. Save me from the lion's mouth, for the horns of the wild oxen you answer me. I will tell of your name to my countrymen. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. You who fear the Lord with awe-inspired reverence, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him. Fear him with submissive wonder, all you descendants of Israel. Now remember that holy family with all of the covenants and promises of God from that bloodline, the same bloodline of King David, the same bloodline from Jacob and Abraham, all of those covenants we are brought into by inheritance. For he is not despised or detested the suffering of the afflicted, nor has he hidden his face from him. But when he cried to him for help, he listened. My praise will be of you in the great assembly. I will pay my vows made in the time of trouble before those who reverently fear him. The afflicted will eat and be satisfied. Those who diligently seek him and require him as their greatest need will praise the Lord. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nations will bow down and worship before you. For the kingship and the kingdom are the Lord's, and he rules over the nations. All the prosperous of the earth will eat and worship. All those who go down to the dust, the dead, will bow before him. Even he who cannot keep his soul alive. So he's saying even the damned are going to bow before him. And that is so true, guys. Where humans are like, oh, Jesus isn't real. I'm like, the fucking demons I'm throwing out of people's houses, they know who Jesus is. So, like, how the hell do you not? Like, that's crazy to me that they can't understand God and they reject God. I'm like, even the demons are like smarter than you, dumbass. But I digress. Even who cannot keep his soul alive will bow before him. Posterity will serve him. They will tell the Lord to the next generations, and they will come and declare his righteousness to a people not yet to be born, that he has done it, and it is finished. They will come and declare his righteousness to a people yet to be born, that he has done it, and it is finished. There is your Psalm 22. You can see how he's crying out to God. He reminds himself of all the times God was faithful to his fathers or his forefathers. And then he starts speaking of the coming Messiah, the rejection of the Messiah, and then redeemed at the end. And like, fuck y'all, dude, even the fucking damned are going to absolutely bow down this Messiah that comes from my bloodline. So there you go. And there's reflection questions up here. So, in what verse does Psalm 22 specifically speak on the crucifixion event? The next one is based on your understanding, and some people may and some people may not, of the injury on Jesus's side when Jesus is shot, stabbed with a spear in the side by the Roman soldier as he hung on the cross. The soldier was seeing if he was dead or not. He was stabbed in his side with a spear. Based on what you know about that, the injury on his side, which symbolizes baptism or purity, his blood or bloodlines, right, and sanctification, and the adoption into the Holy Family, how is verse 14 significant? Well, verse 14 says, I am poured out like water. So I call it the holy water verse. You can Google details of the injury on his side, and I have a little link in there if you want to kind of read about his injuries. I don't actually agree with all of what this particular preacher in this particular article says, but he sums up the one on his side pretty well, so good enough. And then I also included a Septuagint. It's written LXX. Septuagint means 70, but anyways, LXX is Septuagint 70, which was written in Greek, which is the common language of the time. That's why Oz has me in the Septuagint most of the time. But a lot of times we also go back to the Hebrew also. And in the Greek version, I popped in there of just the first 6 verses. There's a missing piece. And based on the Septuagint and the one that I read below, that's why we look at different translations and figure it out and piece it together. But the Septuagint one says, my God, attend to me. Why have you forsaken me? The account of my transgressions is far from my salvation. So that's an important line that was not in the other version. And he says, by God, I cry out to thee by day, but you will not hear, and by night I could find no rest. But you are the praise of Israel, dwells in a sanctuary. Our fathers hoped in thee. They hoped and they did not. And you did deliver them. They cried to thee and were saved. They hoped in thee and were not ashamed. Okay, so there's the first 6 verses based on the Greek Septuagint. And the last question is, what are God's promises that are contained in Psalms? In this particular Psalm, like you can go through and find a shit ton of things that God is promising you. And a lot of times when people are reading Psalms, because David's like bitching all the time, it sounds like, oh, they're piercing me and oh, they're mocking me. It's like fucking sucks, dude. But in those Psalms, if you dig a little bit and read it again, you're going to find a lot of places where he's calling out God's promises and telling how God is faithful. And those are the things that you hang on to.
Okay. We do have a disputed verse in the Holy Water Psalm, and that's kind of what I want to talk about next. So we're going to look at it in Greek, we're going to look at it in Hebrew, and there's also a Dead Sea Scroll problem because there usually is, right? Now, the verse in question, share this tab instead, is over here in verse, where is it? We're in verse 16. For a pack of dogs has surrounded me. A gang of evildoers has encircled me. They pierced my hands and feet. So there it is. Okay. There it is. Share this tab instead. It's verse 16 that holds this debate. And the debate is basically between Christianity and Judaism, Masoretic Hebrew versus translation into English versus Greek. So, a lot of modern versions rely on the Masoretic modern Hebrew until they get to something they don't like. And in this particular one, they don't like this one because this is such a prophetic psalm. Of course, in Judaism, they do not accept that this is a prophetic psalm, and has nothing to do with Jesus, nor the crucifixion, nor him calling out on the cross, or any of that. So this is only about David and David's sufferings. So they put a whole lot more metaphorical in here, but you're going to see, especially if you've seen our Ephraim series and the Lion of Judah piece in the book and all of that chunk with Ephraim that we've talked about. You're going to find this interesting. I think the Hebrew translation. So we're going to talk about that today. All right, here's our verse, and the Greek translates as, "They pierced my hands and my feet." And of course, every Christian in the world goes, "Oh, right, that's the nails in the crucifixion," right? So the fact that this is a Septuagint Greek shows that, it's an early understanding or interpretation that is very different from the modern Masoretic Hebrew text. So what does that one say? Well, in Judaism, they argue, look at those words. They don't like the word pierced. No. They like the word lion. Interesting. Now, I want to stop right here with the lion thing, because you know me and that lion of the tribe of Judah. I just drives me bananas. So we're going to share this tab instead. We're just going to quickly run through this psalm and count how many lions we have. How many lions do we have in this psalm here today? Let's see. Here we go. Do you have any lions? Well, we have the bulls of Bashan, and we're not going to talk about Bashan right now, but that's actually an important phrase from that's an occulty false god phrase, but we'll get there, where the area of Bashan is. I'm going to talk about that today. But here's the first one, pops up in verse 13. Okay, and if you understand the bulls of Bashan and where that area is and what was happening in that area, which I don't want to digress down that rabbit hole right now, but just know that it's a yucky place. And then right after that, we have, "They open wide their mouths against me, like a ravening and roaring lion." So lion is not a good thing in the Old Testament. But suddenly when we get to Revelation 5:5, it's supposed to be a good thing because that's Jesus, right? Not so fast. Not so fast. So here's one place we see lion. The second place, we have another lion here, where they're going to take out this word pierced, okay? And they interpret it as, the lion is at my hands and feet, or the lion is attacking my hands and feet. And we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at that in the Hebrew. But the context we get, a gang of evildoers has encircled me. A lion is attacking or is at my hands and feet. So lions of evildoers, gangs of evildoers, that are lions, are attacking them. And I want you to keep that in mind. And then we have a third place in this psalm, down in line 21, "Save me from the lion's mouth." So we have a lion, right after the executioner and the paw of the dog, right, with the executioner. Now we're being saved from the lion's mouth. There's that lion prowling around, seeking whoever he wills is, whoever he can devour. And I think that's a lot. I think we have 3 lions if we take a look at that and include the second lion from the Hebrew. So I do want to point out that in the Hebrew, that's not the only place, right, that we would have a lion show up in this Psalm of David. All right, share this tab instead. So let's dig in a little bit. The phrase "like a lion" or "they have pierced" if you look at those two words, right, in the Hebrew, you can see that they're really close. Right? We've got an I at the end or we've got a U at the end. So you're going to have plenty of debate about scribal error and all that kind of stuff. But for sake of argument, let's take a look at if this verse said, like a lion. What would it look like in the Hebrew? So if you translate literally, it says, like a lion, my hands and feet. Now that doesn't make much sense, right? It's an incomplete phrase, and it's got a lot of ambiguity in the Hebrew because it lacks that verb, it lacks a connector. So the exact meaning is open to interpretation. So translators of this particular verse, or many verses actually, what they do is they add little phrases here and there, um, or expressions to clarify the context and convey the intended or interpreted meaning in the English. So here they would say, like a lion attacking my hands and feet. Or it would say, like a lion, they are at my hands and feet. Okay. Now, if we're reading this verse, right, as like a lion, they're at my hands and feet, the idea here is that the speaker's hands and feet are not necessarily being pierced, like Christians will think of as being pierced on the cross, but they are still being attacked and mauled while surrounded by lions. So the lions are the ones attacking the hands and feet. Sit with that. So when they add the words in here, you know, like a lion, they are at my hands and feet, or like a lion, they're attacking my hands and feet. They're still implying an aggressive presence or action of this lion attacking and threatening. Now, why I think this is particularly interesting, and you'll hear Christians arguing over this, and Christian and Jews will just go at this verse all day long. But the interesting part to me is it's the same thing to me. And the reason being attacked by lions or being pierced at the hands and feet are pretty much the same ballpark for me is because I'm not waiting for the lion of the tribe of Judah, right? I know where David's from. He's from Ephrathah. He's not from the tribe of Judah. So it makes sense both ways. It makes sense that David is in the land of Judah, but not of the tribe of Judah. And he is surrounded by those in the tribes of Judah, right? And lamenting that the lions of Judah are all around him. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. It also makes sense that the hands and feet are pierced, and that's still prophetic. Or the hands and feet are pierced by the lions, right? Because in Revelation 5:5, we know that it says, look, behold, the Lion of Judah. The root of David has overcome. And those are not a list of attributes. Those are two separate subjects when we analyze it in the Greek. So the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the root of David are not the same. It's not the attributes of one thing. See, I've got a shorts on that. We do that in the book. We really go over Revelation 5:5 deeply in the Greek there. So when you take all these concepts and put it together, it could be either or it could be both. And I want to show you that lion versus pierced. It's that pesky Old Testament lion. I told you. The lion in the Old Testament is not nice. And I'm wondering if the lion in this debated verse is that Lion of the tribe of Judah again. Because David was born in Ephrath, where Rachel was buried, in the land that was Jacob gave to the line of Joseph, sons of Rachel, when he passed down the Abrahamic covenant on his deathbed to Ephraim in Genesis 48. So we've got this area of land that was handed to and controlled by the tribe of Ephraim. And this land is an unincorporated area within the land of Judah, surrounded by the tribes of Judah, but not controlled by and not in the bloodline of the tribe of Judah. In Judah, but not of Judah. And we've talked about this before, but I really want to point it out here in a few places where you're going to see this. 1 Samuel 17. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah. So it's an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, not of Judah. So there's this very special connection with the sons of Rachel to the Ephrathah and the Ephrathite land. And that's where when Jacob was on his deathbed, handing down this piece of land, when he's doing the Abrahamic covenant, because he didn't give specific, he gave the blessings to Ephraim and Manasseh first. That's the first thing, before his own sons. So he puts them ahead of them, Joseph's two sons of Rachel. He also doesn't mention the patriarchs in any of the subsequent blessings that you see in Genesis 49. So there's a lot going on there. And that right before he hands down the Abrahamic covenant and blesses Ephraim, invoking the names of the patriarchs and handing down this little slice of land and promising the generations and the multiplying throughout the nations, basically repeating, right, that lineage, that seed, that line, in the land of the Abrahamic covenant, the threefold is all there. And when you look at what he was speaking of right before he handed this blessing out, you see that he was talking about the land where Rachel was buried, his beloved wife, Joseph's mom. And that land, of course, is Ephrathah. So this lineage of Rachel's sons has a very near and dear and very close tie to this land that's within the territory of Judah, but was not given to Judah. It was given to Ephraim, and that's the land of Ephrath. So David was the son of an Ephrathite. That's bringing you back to where Rachel was buried. Rachel's sons, Joseph, Genesis 48, Ephraim. All that piece is here. Okay, it is in Judah, but not of Judah. The next place you're going to see this is, let's see, Micah. I'm sorry, I spelled it wrong. I have an extra H there. But Micah 5:2. People love to say that this is one of the proof texts that Jesus is from Judah. But no, they're not reading it in the Greek, certainly, because it says, you, Bethlehem, of the house of Ephratah. The house of Ephratah, like the house of David, the house of Joseph, the house of Ephraim, the house of Jacob and Rachel, where she was buried. So this is a clan language. This is bloodline language. You, Bethlehem of the house of Ephrathah, because Bethlehem was in the area of Ephrathah, or better said, Ephrathah was in the area of Bethlehem. And they sort of got absorbed together. And you, the house of Ephrathah, are very few among thousands of Judah. You are few, you are small in number, being among the thousands of Judah. From out of you shall come forth the ruler of Israel. Not a ruler in Israel, the ruler of Israel. And who is Israel? Israel is the sheep, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? They're the sons of Jacob, the 12 sons who are lost and scattered around the world. That's ruling on heaven and earth as sheep of the kingdom of Israel reunited under David. But that's coming from the house of Ephrathah, not the house of Judah. It's among the clans of Judah. It's not one of the clans of Judah because it's in that special little area. So when I see this verse in Micah 2, and I'm thinking of David, our house of Ephrathah dude, right? Growing up here in Ephrath or Ephrathah and being surrounded by all of these folks of Judah, and Judah's the lion, right? And then he's talking in the psalm of being surrounded by these lions pawing at him and lamenting. Well, it fits. Over in Matthew 2:6, this doesn't say Ephrath or Ephrathah in this verse, but Matthew 2:6 is pointing back to that prophecy in Micah. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people, my sheep of Israel. So he's referring back to that Micah prophecy. And although it doesn't name Ephrathah here, that's what he's doing. It's the Bethlehem Ephrathah in the land of Judah. And why do they keep saying the land of Judah, the land of Judah? Well, because there was another Bethlehem. There's David's Bethlehem and Jacob's Bethlehem and Rachel's Bethlehem, the Ephrathah, Ephraim, Genesis 48, Rachel's burial place, Ephrath, right? And then there's another one. So this is locational, not tribal, okay? It's also where David found the Ark of the Covenant in Psalm 132, and we're not going to do a big piece here because we'll do Psalm 132 all on its own. But line 6 says, we heard David, this is like back to David's childhood, growing up in Ephrathah. And he says, we heard of it, meaning the Ark of the Covenant, at Ephrathah. And we found it in the fields of the wood. So the location of the Ark of the Covenant, right, that he heard of in his childhood in Ephrathah, were found in the woods in Ephrath. So there's that, in the fields of the wood. And you see that here in the Hebrew. It's a really important place. Surrounded by Judah, but not of Judah. So they keep referring to this land in Judah, in Judah, in Judah, because you have to remember during David's time, right? And when we've got the time of the patriarchs, we've got the time of the judges, then we've got the two kingdoms, and we've got the split kingdoms. So it's not just all Judah, right? And you have to understand that things are locational, not tribal. So when they say Bethlehem in Judah, they're not meaning Bethlehem of the tribe of Judah. They're saying the Bethlehem in Judah, not the Bethlehem in Zebulun, which is way in the north by the Galilee. And you'll see that second Bethlehem, or the other Bethlehem, Bethlehem in Zebulun, and that's in Joshua 19:5 and Judges 12:8 through 10. So a lot of times when they're saying Bethlehem, they're clarifying which one, right? Bethlehem and Ephrath, with the Ephrathites of David within the boundaries of Judah, or Bethlehem in the boundary of Zebulun. Does that make sense? So this is locational, but everyone's reading it as tribal because they desperately want to follow Judah, and I don't know why. I don't know. Well, maybe I do know why, but whatever. So in our lion versus pierced, it's that it could be If you want it to say, hey, hey, Judah Heights, if you really want that to be a lion, I'll take it because it can be prophetic and lioness. This is David in Ephrathah, surrounded by those lions of Judah, if that's what you want. Or it's Jesus, surrounded by the lions at his crucifixion. Those darn Pharisees. Or it's pierced. Or it's both. Because David was born in Ephrath, Rachel was buried. This whole land is surrounded. So let's move over to the Dead Sea Scrolls problem. So I don't really care about the debate for verse 16. But let's check out our Dead Sea Scroll problem. Well, Psalm 22:16 is not found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, Psalm 22 is, but we have fragments of it. And we don't have a fragment specifically of this debated verse. So the scrolls themselves, although people really want to say, yeah, it really, backs up the Masoretic text, it doesn't. Doesn't always. Textual variants definitely existed in the Second Temple period, which we already know. That's your Davidic redactors, and we've talked about that way back in the book and probably in Meet Ephraim series as well. And maybe even the Saul series, I don't know, but we talk about the Davidic redactors of the Second Temple period a lot. And the Dead Sea Scrolls really confirms that there was some janky stuff going on in that Second Temple after returning from Babylon, when they were trying to unite everybody and, go back and fix some stuff to make it say what they wanted it to say during that period of time. We've gone over that before. And the Dead Sea community, based on all their writing and a collective understanding of the other scrolls found there, it's pretty much, it did not interpret the same way as the Hebrew Masoretic does, based on a collective understanding of the other scrolls. So that's just your scholar's opinion as to, even though the fragment's not there, so we don't know what it says, they're like, yeah, kind of based on everything else that we saw, it's probably prophetic. So either way, it's a toss-up. Y'all can debate that all day long if it means that much to you. It doesn't to me. I'll take it either way. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something.